Welcome to Total Pro Nation, Lambo for the Sports, featuring the Big Brother, featuring Satellite Sports Network. Um, the college football landscape has changed and is very surprising, especially with teams like Miami, Florida State, and Texas are all undefeated. Now, being undefeated is not really the surprising part, but exceeding expectations is very, very surprising, especially when it goes to Miami. I mean, Miami was not very good last year. Um, Texas was, 8-5 last year at one point in Steve Sarkisian's first year. They were 5-7. Florida State was also 5-7 in 2021 as well. Mike Norvell's job was on the line, and look where they at now, 5-0. Florida State did come off a bye week this past weekend, and they played Virginia Tech, which we'll talk about the Virginia Tech thing next. Notre Dame and Alabama had one loss. Notre Dame still has a chance to get in, but they have to win the rest of the games. They have to beat USC. They play a tough Louisville team next week. By the way, Louisville is 5-0. That's a shocker. Louisville is 5-0 for the first time since 2013 in the ACC. So there's teams we can't sleep on. But do you think, my question is, do you think the college football landscape, or not, excuse me, do you think the college football playoff will change? It won't be the normal same four teams. You might still have an Ohio State and Georgia and Michigan up there, but do you think it's going to change? Do you think somebody could possibly sneak in, that top four, maybe that top three, depending on injuries and whatnot? Because this looks not expected. Nobody expected not just these three teams, but other teams to go up as well.
Yeah, well, I'm with you with Notre Dame, and I've been with you with that since, week 0. I really think Notre Dame can be the fourth team in here. And at this point, I know we've talked about it a lot, and I'm pretty sure we're on the same page with this. We don't think Texas is all the way back to what the national media seems to be trying to push narrative-wise. But I mean, we're 5 games in. And not that they've looked comfortable in all 5 wins, but pretty soon I'm going to have to put them as a legit, number 3 or number 4. And I think 1 and 2 is locked up with Georgia and Michigan for sure. Unless, Ohio State beats Michigan. But in that case, I think they would just flip from 2 to 3. Now, if the Notre Dame-Ohio State game goes differently, I have Notre Dame in that spot, but it obviously didn't, and here we are. So I do think Georgia and Michigan are 1 and 2 pretty locked. 3 and 4, excuse me. I don't know. I mean, Ohio State could definitely just win out the rest and maybe lose 1 and be the number 3. But I do think, Florida State, you can't sleep on them. You can't sleep on Penn State. They look dominant on, in all 3 phases. Oregon as well. I mean, who's to say Oregon doesn't win out? If they beat, I don't know, if they beat USC or if they beat somebody, well, I guess not Utah anymore, but if they, someone in the Pac-12 like that, that's up top, which it would be because Pac-12 is stacked right now, in the Pac-12 championship, then, I mean, it could definitely be Oregon sliding in there as well. I mean, Washington is 1 spot above them, in the rankings. So I don't know. I mean, USC is a spot below them, so that's 3 Pac-12 teams in a row. Any one of those 3 could slide in there. Like I said, Penn State, Florida State, Notre Dame. But I mean, lower than that, I think it's just awesome to have some difference. Duke is number 19. Kentucky moved up from unranked to 20. You mentioned Louisville, they're 25. Fresno State is 24. It's just, and LSU, you've been saying it since the beginning. It's literally just the name LSU is what's keeping them in these rankings. There are so many teams that deserve to get that spot. Move Fresno up to 23, move Louisville up to 24. Somebody else deserves that 25 spot. I don't think LSU should be in here. Both of the games they've lost, the Florida State game, they just got rolled pretty much. They didn't have really too much business even considering winning that game at all. And they obviously didn't. And then this week, I get it. Ole Miss now moves up to 16th and they were 20th last week. I don't think Ole Miss is as good as LSU is like on paper. So like it's just Florida State, I think is, but the Ole Miss game, like they were the better team and they did not play like the better team, and obviously they lost. So like I don't think they really deserve to be in the top 25 anymore. But to answer your original question, yeah, I think any of those three Pac-12 teams, and then obviously, Florida State, Penn State, could slide in there. And Texas is a legit contender at this point, yeah.
What about Miami? Miami in the Mario Cristobal era, who played originally at Miami. He did very successful in Oregon with Justin Herbert. They lost some games that probably could have maybe cost them, the college football playoff, but there was tough teams back then. Are we sleeping on Miami in the ACC? Now I understand the standings doesn't have them exactly where they're at, but Miami hasn't lost a game, and I think Miami has improved. They still have Tyler Van Dyke as the quarterback. I feel like they improved on the offensive line tremendously, which that's Mario Cristobal's strength. It's the offensive line, being a former offensive line coach. And I feel like the defense, I'm not saying it's the best, but it's improved from last year. You think Miami can sneak up in there?
I don't know how high. They're 17 right now.
I think they're 20 as of now. No, they're 17 right now, but they also beat a good. I understand that they beat a good Texas A&M team.
Yeah, that's really the thing that, like, obviously any defense that besides the Texas A&M game that allows 3.7 points, you have to take notice. But also you have to notice that it's Miami, Ohio was the first game, and they rolled them. It was 38-3, and that's what they should have done. I don't even know who this team is they played week 3.
Bethune-Cookman.
Yeah, I like. Yeah,
that's where Ed Reed was supposed to coach. That's where Ed Reed was the head coach, and then I guess he got fired. He resigned because of money issues and with the program and whatnot. So yeah. Bethune-Cookman.
Yeah. So no shit. They should dominate that game. Temple, I think they should dominate as well, and they did. But that's like a team can play down to their competition. We've talked about it, with like Texas has done it a couple times. And they haven't fell victim to it, but they've definitely played down. But like the game against Texas A&M is really what I think projected them into being a ranked team at this point. And Texas A&M isn't ranked anymore. So who's to say, like that's obviously a super talented roster, but the team is obviously way underperforming. So who's to say how much that really means? And that might just me being Virginia Tech biased and being a little bit of a hater. But just looking at the rest of the schedule, I just pulled it up. They'll win against Georgia Tech. UNC, I don't think that they're going to win. They play Clemson, which is probably a toss-up, 50-50. They're going to destroy Virginia. They're gonna roll over NC State, who just replaced Brennan Armstrong with their second-string QB. So he had one good year in 2021, and he has not played well since then. So, yeah, he just got benched at NC State. They then play Florida State. I don't see them beating Florida State, especially not at Florida State. Like it's a road game.
Well, we don't know how consistent this is going to be because, Florida State almost lost to Boston College. So this could be one of these teams where Florida State can go undefeated, win the rest of the games, and all this other stuff. And this could be a game where they almost fold.
Yeah, I hear you, but it just considering them to sneak up there, I find a little bit more unlikely just because they have to play UNC, which like their UNC's defense is a little bit of an issue still, but they're up to 14, and like the offense of Miami so far this year has not been inconsistent. It's been great, but we've seen it in the past where like they have good players and they don't. I'm not going to say that past teams are a representation of this team, but just going off the track record, like I don't want to say that they'll expose somebody's weakness when we've seen them not do it before. Clemson's a toss-up, so I think they've got UNC is maybe like 60-40 leaning UNC. Clemson at this point, I think, is a 50-50 toss-up. Florida State, I see that like 70-30. leaning towards Florida State. Louisville, they're a good team. We talked about it. Can't sleep on them. I won't give it 50-50. I think Miami's better than them. And then Boston College, who we saw sneak up on Florida State. They probably will not lose to Boston College. But just saying, they have 3 games that I think are very possible losses. And then the Louisville game is, slightly in their favor. But like 3 losses, if they lose 2 of those 3, like there's no way they're sneaking up like past what, 15?
Maybe 14, depending on what Ole Miss does in the future.
Yeah.
Not Colorado, but that depends on everybody else. That depends on the top 10 teams in general. I mean, we have to see Louisville. We got to see what Louisville does. If Washington's going to lose a game, Oregon will lose a game. If Notre Dame going to lose a game, Oklahoma, UNC is ranked above them as well. So it kind of depends on them certain teams as well to see how it goes. But like I said, we ain't going to find out until probably about week 7, week 8 of college football, which is about 2 weeks from now. We ain't going to find out until, who loses and whatnot. But that's something we'll talk about later. But next episode of Lambo Water Sports, this is a game that we're both excited for because Virginia Tech has won. Not only they won, they dominated. Yes, they dominated. Both of us were in Blacksburg. It was great. Great atmosphere. Great seats. The whiteout. It was great. It was incredible. All Hokie fans was happy. Came home with a W. Like I said, Pittsburgh is garbage. So is King Pickett. We'll talk about that later. High in the world, they got whooped 30-6. I can't talk because my team got lost to the Cowboys. I can't really talk too much either. But we'll talk about that later in the show. But we're gonna go on to the next episode. We're gonna talk about Virginia Tech versus Pittsburgh. Is Kyron Jones the future quarterback of Virginia Tech, or is Brent Pry still gonna stick with Grant Wells after he comes off in? That's something we'll talk about later.